As a local cryptid, I take great pleasure in seeing developers try to embrace the more indescribable and zany, but this entire game makes me feel like I tried to look up clown porn after staring at the sun for an hour straight. The visuals are flat out ugly, hurt your eyes, and often lead to confusion. The main menu and level select UI are covered in twisted organs and nightmare faces. Textures are so obscenely garish that there's no real way of telling what's what just by looking at it dead on. Is this a wall? A door? I can't fucking tell. If being visually challenged wasn't hard enough for you, the controls should be enough to push you one step forward off a fucking cliff. They're heinous. You press right click, and oh, what's that? Years of industry conventions made you think that would be aim down sights? No shit for brains, that's your reload. And you don't just click and pop a new mag in your iron, you gotta drag your mouse down, like way down, past this line to even do it. So what button is aiming on then? Shift. You can rebind your controls, yes, but these are the default keybinds that you start with, and when you're just getting started, they make you feel like you've never played a game before in your life. It makes me feel like I'm piloting someone else's body while they have a blood clot. I beat this game, went back to playing normal shooters, and proceeded to have a total conniption while playing my keyboard like a xylophone. And I fucking love it. This game is not user-friendly, but that's the point. The world and its very systems are hostile. You're openly a for-hire hitman that runs around, weapons out, and civilians just blankly stare at you like carrying around a heavy machine gun is just normal, because to them, it is. And now that all of my fellow ADHD people have either clicked away or glued their eyelids to their screens, it's time to get a bit more in-depth. Disclaimer to keep shitters out of my comments. I've beaten this game, gathered all the weapons, and finished all the levels in a previous playthrough around when the game first left early access. I had no interest in making videos at the time, so a lot of the footage used in this is from my secondary playthrough, and some of it is from my original save file that I erased before writing the script, and in that second playthrough I intentionally skipped over some of the more annoying secrets and side content. If that upsets you, sit back down and try to think more about this weird viewer-creator relationship we've got going on. Cruelty Squad is a biopunk immersive sim developed by Consumer Soft Products, a Finnish company. You tackle your objectives however you want with the tools provided, and at the start of the game, that's nothing but one gun, the shit in your ass, and a lot of determination. No, there are not two guns. The starting SMG does not exist, and anyone that uses it has no rights. You build up dosh either through robbing people, completing your missions, fishing, or the stock market system, which is accessible anywhere, anytime, any place. You play as a directly labeled, fucked up, detached loser, something I personally relate with very deeply. They're not given any character traits, they never speak, they serve specifically as a vessel for the player, and you never learn more about them, aside from that they lost their job, got pulled into some new employment they couldn't say no to, and that you're playing as them. This is us, dump truck and all. It's pretty hard to really give this festering mass any kind of definitive review, because if you ask me how each of the individual lesions throbbed, I'd tell you that the shooting is fine, the overall readability of the game is terrible, the surface level writing is confusing, on purpose, but we'll get back to that. And the overall mechanical structure of the gameplay loop is so fragile that the moment you start to get access to implants, it falls apart like my identity did in high school. In a way, it also kind of proves that genre is a spectrum. Cruelty Squad is an immersive sim, but it's not Deus Ex. It's a fast-paced shooter, but it's not Quake. It's not your average drug, it's Crocodile. It dips its toes into a lot of different piss puddles, and honestly, it may not excel at everything, but I think it accomplished what it set out to do. Whether that's being a video game, causing a headache, or both is about as up in the air as the quality of my writing. The level design is spectacular. In an effort to not hold your hand like most games are wont to do nowadays, Cruelty Squad just drops you into the map, slaps a marker on the person you need to kill, and shoves you along like it's your first day of school without any parental support. You're free to explore and route each level specifically how you want, and there are multiple ways to get to each of your targets and just as many ways to get the hell out once the exit is open. It invites you to snap it in half, use its mechanics against it in a variety of ways with whatever equipment and weapons you want, and it makes a lot of it feel excellent. The tools you're given to navigate these missions are also, for the most part, quite nice. Weapons feel good to use and are fairly effective, even if the overall weapon types are somewhat limited when compared to the total amount of weapons you can get. You got pistols, rifles, SMGs, some individual standout weapons, and memes. However, the base gunplay is snappy and feels good enough that it never really bothered me that a lot of them just felt like different models dropped onto the same gun controller with some numbers bumped around. In the spirit of fairness, you can only make your bullet weapons so unique when your game looks like Haggis and has the mechanical depth of Daedalus's left nut. Personally, I'd rather have a game that's fun to play and easy to understand than one that isn't. At least the enemy AI was pre-lobotomized so you don't have to do it yourself. All of these systems and tools give you all the freedom in the world to engage with encounters however you want, where you want, when you want, but the actual combat of the game is pretty simple. Toaster and bathtub simple. It boils down to just standing outside of their range and taking pot shots or quickly flick shooting them down in close range like you're competing for John Carmack's Ferrari. Because if you spend any amount of time near an alerted enemy without killing them, you're probably just gonna fucking die anyway. It ends up presenting you with an all or nothing gameplay style without much in between. You either wick everyone to death or get snuffed out like one. The art style is unavoidably revolting in a charming way. People are desensitized, malformed, and dedicate one of their 2 remaining brain cells to shooting and the other one to Chunko Pops. There's no real explanation for why everything looks so disgusting, but there's something to love and respect about a game so bold and confident in its execution that it looks like this. The textures, art, and music are hideous, but in an ugly dog sort of way. An exceptionally ugly dog that you can't help but love because you know it's trying its best. A lot of games worry quite a bit about making things look nice, shooting for the moon and landing among the stars or whatever pompous shit people say. But Cruelty Squad just pointed its barrel right in the dirt and made the whole chamber explode via blockage. Minimal effort, out like a firework, forever memorable. All of your jobs are centered around taking out specific key hits, so your wetwork conglomerate employers can move forward with their plans to assert control over what remains of society. You're just a dude, freshly unemployed for a nondescript issue with your previous job and scooped up for your new employment because you're just that good at killing. It's probably safe to assume that the people that employed you got you fired, specifically so they could hire you on, considering the reach they have. Speaking of not having the context for what the hell is happening, what is the story? Outside of each individual mission having its own diseased rareware text blurb before you start, there isn't much continuation from mission to mission. It can all be boiled down to this dude needs to die because that means more money for us, or oh, I just thought it'd be funny. And it can get a bit repetitive. If it weren't for the grotesque but oddly charming visuals and audio, I wouldn't have really read any of these past the first 6 or so missions. And I don't have that liberty anyways because I'm the YouTuber here and I'm hopelessly clung to the just-in-case mentality when recording, so I've read all of these a few times. Most of the game's writing is in its world building, surrounding exposition, and item descriptions. Combine that with most NPC dialogue in mission being totally worthless, and you end up with the game feeling ironically dry to anyone that doesn't actively seek out information. Granted, every item description is literally accessible right in the mission select screen, meaning it's genuinely all right at your fingertips, but this really ends up being a band-aid workaround for something that could have just been delivered via exploration, and not clicking on icons, like I'm scrolling through my Steam library in a fit of bored depression. There are loads of mentions of these existent ideas, companies, groups of people, occupations, but we never really see these step up to the plate at any point during the game. So it ends up with all the information the game gives you feeling like it's just out in a vacuum, detached from anything you actually do. Video games as a medium have a big advantage when it comes to storytelling by orders of magnitude because it's much easier to take it all in at the pace you want, and to explore things as deeply as you want. Cruelty Squad could have done an amazing job at this, but the only real way it tells you about its writing through its gameplay is by having you directly do the do that makes the story do. If you're not paying very close attention, or analyzing the game to make sure your review isn't shit, you're going to miss that the story even exists. And even when you point out to yourself, oh wow, this is your boss in this level, or Idiot Party was just your friend getting his sick kicks, the way things string together is still so very vague. It's also entirely fair to say that this isn't what it's going for. It's not here to tell you its story, it's here to give you jobs to do, tools to do them, and to not ask questions. It's just unfortunate that if you end up asking those questions anyways, there's no real way to get complete answers without lots of zip ties and shrooms, and I don't think I've taken enough blunt force trauma to piece it together myself. So with that in mind, you're probably thinking that what little writing is there is great, isn't it? No, you simple freak, have you been paying attention at all? Cruelty Squad is a game about diving through sewage and swinging around buildings on your own intestines like John Carpenter's Spider-Man. It's insane, an absolutely nightmarish shitpost, and it's incredible because it knows that. Every bit of dialogue is delivered like a Discord server member roleplaying as a CEO terribly, and the overarching plot is non-existent. It's hard to say if any of the endings really mean anything, because each of them doesn't feel like it's trying to conclude anything, more just serve as a vessel for whatever obtusely insane ideas the developer had in mind for how to say money is the root of all evil differently. But each ending just allocates to whatever different drug the devs were on while making it. And I know that in spite of this, Redditors will be pointing to this game for years to come when they talk about that Sigma grindset shit, as if this game isn't trying to directly show how poorly that idea has affected our society. Simply put, the game isn't as deep as people make it out to be. It's incredibly upfront and blunt with this message, and it's dancing around on its own corpse while wearing a Lady Gaga clown suit. The endings are incredibly abrupt and jarring, like a Timey profile for a poly couple specifically looking for a trans woman as their third, and they're suspiciously adamant about it. But you're not playing this game for the story, you're playing it because you got drawn in by the sickening visuals and realized, shit, the gunplay is pretty solid, and the overall experience is novel. And it is. Shooting feels nice, weapons have satisfying and chunky sound effects even though they're all weird as hell. But remember when I said not all of your options feel great? The game's pretty tough. You die a lot, you're made of paper and get outright folded by enemies in mere seconds. And despite the game giving you heavy weapons and equipment options to play more aggressively and be tankier, they only really amount to keeping you from living out your daydreams for a few seconds extra unless you invest so deeply that you cut off all other movement options. So you might as well play the glass cannon, or you'll make your gameplay experience miserable while shuffling around like you have elephantitis. As for the exploration, some of the equipment serves the express purpose of letting you go through this one specific route in the level so you can do some secret hunting, which is fine. But the moment you get back to the normal route, you're now handicapped because one of your slots is filled with some junk that doesn't help you with just playing the game. That's why I rate the Grapendix so much. It's excellent for making distance, traversing the maps like you're playing a demented creepypasta copy of Rainbow Six, or getting a restraining order because it's your fucking appendix. The stock market system is another aspect that does its job and does it alright, but ends up becoming a detriment to the overall experience in a few ways. A big part of the early game and the entire crux of the game's plot is that you're broke as hell, absolutely zeroed in the bank account. However, after completing Mall Madness, all stocks start to go absolutely haywire and go up in value infinitely until you finish the next mission. Honk honk, Jeff Bezos joke, shut up. And you can very easily just invest everything into a single stock, body part, or fish, and then watch your monetary value go up higher than the devs, which undermines the entire purpose of your employment in the first place in the game's story, reiterating that the writing doesn't mean jack shit, and completely removing the need to worry about money ever again if you just leave the game open and idle on the mission select while all your assets multiply. I love this game, and I think it does a lot of things really well, but some of its ideas are just kind of rough. It may seem really asinine to lay this game out so harshly when it boils down to just capitalism bad and really colorful comic sans with eye-gouging JPEG artifacting, and that's because it mostly is. And I will be met with vitriol and toxicity for harshly criticizing a game currently sitting at 97% on Steam, even though I spent most of the earlier portion of the script contracting oral harpies from it, and am about to invite you all to do the same. The blunt reality is that Cruelty Squad isn't perfect, and it shouldn't be. But in order to talk about the things the game does really well, I needed to bring up its downfalls as well. But hey, dicks up my ass for picking this as my first game to ever make a video on, because despite spit roasting it for nearly half the script, I still think it's a genuinely wonderful experience. Once you get past the intestine-lined walls and muscle memory destroying control layout, it's not meant to be taken seriously, so if you take the route I have and end up trying to do research and genuinely sitting down and thinking about this game because you're also a jaded, forgotten old hag, you'll poke holes in it, and it'll reduce your enjoyment of it. But all of these, the balancing being lopsided and some of the mechanics being left totally unchecked, these barely tarnish my opinion of the game. And if anything you've seen on screen or heard come out of my pessimistic mouth interests you, I highly recommend you buy it. I'm not smart enough to make ending on a positive note funny, but I find it even harder to truly say that any of Cruelty Squad's issues actually impacted the overall experience. Give them your money, your teeth, whatever currency they accept. They took from my bone collection just fine.